Welcome to Inside the Upside Down. Tonight, we are going to be talking about contacting child spirits. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, Shana Wankel. And this is something that I know it's near and dear to Shana's heart. She is able to interact and really kind of like feel out a number of child spirits when we go to haunted locations, cemeteries. Like she'll be drawn to children's graves, and so we've had a lot of different paranormal experiences concerning children. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. I do want to welcome back everybody who's watching Edge of the Rabbit Hole tonight, in which we had Jay and Marie Yates on there. We had a fantastic time for them. If you haven't watched that yet, of course, watch this first. Afterward, go ahead and check that out on the Haunted Road Media YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/hauntedroadmedia. Or in the coming days, you'll be able to listen to that on iHeartRadio and other podcast platforms that we are now on. We're now, Edge of the Rabbit Hole is on iHeartRadio. And, of course, we're already on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, all that, as well as the Mike Ricksecker Audio Journey, which is where Inside the Upside Down goes after we're done here. So check those out later, because right now we're going to be talking about contacting child spirits. I think that allowed enough time for people to enter into the chat down here, since we're broadcasting live on Facebook right now. Yes, hello, everybody. Tracy Christian, Robert Hanna, Tammy Heitzman, David Wise in the house. Greg Rinkin. Adam Tillery. Tillery lurking again.
Oh, and Liz Roach is in the house. She's
awesome.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
I love her. She's laughing right now also because I said that.
Candy and Dara and I was about to do a whole romper stopper bopper. No, let's not do that. Okay, so child spirits. Did you get a chance to share everything out? I know that's kind of what you do when we first start. Okay, cool. So when she starts talking, then I'll share it. So we take turns. It's all about sharing here. All right. So now we had a couple of cemetery crawls that we did this past weekend. And a couple of interesting things about that. One, we found out later that there are a lot of children, and that was the Kennedy one. There was maybe a dozen stones up there, but apparently there's a lot of children that are buried up there.
Yeah.
And then when we were at Jalapa, which we ended up calling the Dragonfly Cemetery, that one really drew you. So, and then there was something else that happened afterward. So let's start with, this is the Kennedy. It's spelled Kennedy, Cannedy. I think it's probably pronounced Kennedy. But this is a deer trail that basically goes up the hill to where the cemetery is. And then following that, these are a couple of the headstones. Really hard to tell who these are necessarily for, whether they're children or adults. There were a couple of smaller stones around, but you had heard from somebody that there were a lot of children that were buried there. Somebody in the area that's familiar with the cemetery.
Yeah, someone in Greene County, and she's a graver, she calls it, like we are, and she's very much into the older abandoned cemeteries and history and stuff, just like we are. So she's actually connected to one of our haunts that we've touched on a couple of times.
One of the hanging tree spots,
yeah. So there will be some cool stuff involving that coming up pretty shortly, I think. So
yeah, if you guys never saw that video, later on, of course, go check out the Haunted Road Media YouTube channel. And it was the first hanging tree video that we did, and that was the Dr. McAuliffe video.
Yeah.
And what's really kind of crazy about that is, as I stepped on the spot where the hanging tree was, from inside my pocket, the phone, not only did it go off, but it went off with some sort of ringtone or chime or whatever it was that I've never used before. Nothing on my phone is programmed to use that, and it made a sound like you've just hit the jackpot. It was crazy out of nowhere. So we'll wrap that up into something here pretty soon. But so she's very familiar with the area, and the fact that we're hitting another cemetery with a lot of child spirits. And then following that, on our expedition last week, and we go to this Jalapa cemetery, or Jalapa, or however it is actually pronounced. I'll show you here. So this is it, Jalapa cemetery. There's
That looks familiar.
Shauna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
There's
didn't know
Shauna. I'm being a stalker and snapping photos of her. So this cemetery is pretty interesting. We called it the Dragonfly Cemetery because of how many dragonflies were flying about, and that's like a totem animal for you.
Yeah, I think it is, only because they seem to either land on me or near me, or on my car while I'm driving in traffic where there's like nothing but just buildings and stuff around, and in my car as a passenger until I'm like, you gotta go. I don't want to leave you in here. But yeah, it happens a lot, and it's happened a lot more in recent years than I can remember it ever happening to me before. So I had just assumed that it was a spirit or totem of mine.
Bree Jones is asking if there are civil war graves there. So this cemetery here, Jalapa, yeah, there are a couple of Civil War graves within this particular cemetery. So yes, that is true. But this is a grave that called out to you. And this is when we first started noticing the dragonflies.
Yeah.
That it was like right on the headstone. And it's like ever since that moment, we started noticing more and more dragonflies.
Yeah, I stopped there first. This was before, because it was one of the first, in the first like 5 or so minutes of being there, one of the first graves that I headed towards. And I was like, oh, it's kids, it's children. And then I stayed there for a little bit, and then I walked away, and I kept kind of looking back at it and stuff like that. And then I was like, I think I'm going to go back. Something drew me back to it. And when I got back there, that's the first dragonfly that I saw. And then it kept going around that one and landing on it. And I got pretty close to it.
Yeah, if you go back, any of you who are on our personal Facebook pages, if you go back through our photos from this past weekend, you'll notice several on both of our pages of the dragonflies within the cemetery. But it did start with this child grave. And so there is a question out here from Tracy Christian. Why do children's spirits stick around? Which is a difficult question to answer.
I wish I knew the answer to that. I would like to think that, but considering some of the places that I have discovered, these children, I, would hate to think that the way that I see the building is the same way that they see the building, and that they're forced to be in there with who knows who and who knows, because not all buildings have a nice past. So there's some like legit terrible, scary stuff that happens in some of these buildings. And to think that, even just one child is in there with these people, it's sad. It's so sad. So I hope that they have someone there with them on their behalf to make sure that nothing happens to them.
I do hope so. Really, it's kind of the age-old question, that, not just children, but why do any of these spirits still stick around? And that's something that I think in this field that we're still trying to answer. I think we have some answers for it that are kind of almost like common sense, that, well, some people are sticking around because they feel there's still something they want to do, or there's a message to send, or they don't know that they've passed on, which, could be true for some of the children. That would make a lot of sense. But, I have, since you brought it up, the idea that you hope that somebody's there watching over them. I talk about it from time to time, that book Yankee Ghost by Hans Holzer, reading some of his stories. And I remember one in particular in this old mansion where there was a child who was definitely playing around, which was kind of like the primary haunting of it. But there was also a woman there that was also haunting this old mansion. And basically, she was there watching over the girl, because the girl didn't know to go anywhere. That's basically, she was kind of stuck there, for lack of a better term. And so the woman was there to keep an eye out over her.
Yeah.
So, all right. So something interesting that we noticed, or I guess I noticed and then I showed you, but that happened directly after this is highly speculative. I can't necessarily say it's anything paranormal. It may be. It's interesting. Since we were doing all this, driving around, and we went to these couple of different spots. Let me get back to, okay, there's the child headstone, and there's a lot of glare here, because of the shininess of my car, but on the side of my car, handprints appeared. And, my car is dirty, so if I was to try to make a handprint, it would just take the dirt right off. And so these are whitish handprints that are on the side of the car down there by the wheel well. So, I mean, I'm not touching anywhere by the wheel well for sure. There's also, you see this streak that kind of goes, from a little bit higher that comes down, almost like somebody was trying to, like kind of grab and reach up and kind of slid down and made that mark down there at the bottom. And then you have this other one like kind of off to the side there. I really just don't even know what to make of this.
I don't either, because I watched, you on another part of the car, make a handprint to compare the two, and the dust or the dirt comes off on your skin, and then it shows the original color of the car underneath because you're going through that layer and taking it off. But this was like it added something else, some other type of substance to it.
Right.
But we were alone.
We were alone. We went to two different cemeteries. It's hard to know. Is it something from one of those cemeteries? You compared handprints, and it seemed to be around the size of your hand. So it's not even necessarily a child, although you don't have like freakishly large hands for a woman or anything.
Large hands, but
right. So I mean, it could be. There's always a possibility it could be a child. I don't know what to make of this. So, because I can't imagine that after the fact when we went to Dairy Queen, but we went through the drive-thru, and it's not like somebody walked up to our car and So. And
you've been, have gotten stuff out of your trunk before that. Definitely, you would notice it kind of stuck out.
Yeah, and I guess that's the one thing that I didn't provide right there was when I went to the trunk to get things in and out, that touching the back of the trunk, it takes the dirt right off, so you have this like really nice clear darker gray spot, because that's about the color of my car, is that darkish gray. So yeah, I don't know what to make of that. The chat is not scrolling, so I have no idea what you guys are saying about it. So we have a question there from Betty. We'll get to that in a second here. All right. So I guess I'll go ahead and we can answer that question then. And so Diane Hilbert says, if there's a pond nearby, there will be tons of dragonflies because they feed on mosquitoes.
Do you remember?
There wasn't there right next to the cemetery. Yeah. It's not like there was one right there.
Yeah, I thought maybe that there was some kind. Because I know I read an article, I posted an article once. I didn't get to read it all because my phone was taking forever to load it, so I just posted it for later.
Yeah.
About different plants that you can plant that attract dragonflies.
Right. Because you're interested in doing that, in attracting dragonflies.
I would love to do that. I would love to have dragonflies in my backyard just every day, and I will just sit there and let them land on me and talk to me and whatever they want to do. Yep.
So Betty Lange asked, Mike, could it be that children's spirits show only to an accepting living human? It's possible. You see, I mean, I think I'm pretty accepting, but you see certainly more children's spirits than I. But I've always taken that as to, you're a mother figure. I mean, you are a mother. So.
I guess.
You guess you're a mother?
I know I'm a mother, but but I guess that's why I don't know. Maybe they sense, that they can trust me. So, I've seen adult spirits also. But I seem to sense the younger generation more.
Yeah. And we talked last week at length about one that that we saw on the night of the investigation for the Paracon in the hallway upstairs. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we did cover pretty much in length last episode. But we'll show you a couple more things from Mineral Springs that we didn't last week. But one, Shana, that you do connect with fairly well is from Vandalia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the building in Vandalia that's been a number of different things over the years. It's a flower shop now, but at one time it had been a hotel, a bank, a drugstore, all these different things. So, but we're thinking this little boy that you've come into contact up there with, it's probably from the hotel days. I guess it's been a brothel at one point. So there's a possible maybe connection there. But basically down this hallway would be the second door on the right there. And I have this great photo of you kneeling and engaging with him.
Yeah, I've seen him in my mind's eye, and what he looks like, his age, what I perceive his age to be around doesn't fit with the documented deaths that were on the property that the owner has. So that's why I just naturally assumed that it was during a hotel period of time that the building had, because a hotel would have many people in it. Whether he died on the property or not, or whether his spirit's following someone else around, I mean, I don't know. He's never shown himself to me other than just in my own head. And then I've actually physically seen him, and I could see his lips moving, but I cannot hear any words. I can't hear anything coming out. So I don't have a name. I don't have anything.
Well, not for the one upstairs.
But
we
we've
have
heard
one for downstairs.
But we did hear a child say, "I'm here."
Yeah.
So he does have a voice. I had just never heard it until that.
Yeah, that was the last time we were there was the first time that we actually got that confirmation that that he was there. That at least as far as like an EVP or something like that, because you had already seen him, and so I guess that's why you kept going back, is that you had seen him there. He was starting to visit you here, or at your old apartment, I guess, and then we got that confirmation. I'm here the last time that we were there when you were trying to interact with him. Yeah.
And then one of the other times we were getting ready to leave, and I didn't want to leave at all. Like I didn't want to leave him behind. I could have probably stayed there all night, because then you could see his little shadow kind of moving around back there. It's like, I don't want to go either. I don't want to go, but I can't stay. And then just his energy was so strong though, because you could put your hand in it. You could tell where he was, just back there in that corner.
Yeah, that was a room where you would put your hand out, and I could see like that black misty stuff kind of wrapping around it, which was really interesting. So, but Vandalia is also the location where we did get a name for the little boy downstairs. And that little boy has been seen on numerous occasions by even customers of the flower shop. Like they'll tell Donella, hey, there's a little boy over there, back around those cases, and she knows exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So she knows it's a little boy spirit. But we actually did get his name, and his name was Andy the last time we got there. So if you watch our last Vandalia video, which I guess was last year now, both those EVPs are on there. The one Andy, and then the other one I'm here. So again, two little boys.
It's very rare to get a name too, because they don't always do that. It's nice when they do.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. That's although that's probably one of our most frequently asked questions. Are you here or not? Are you here? What's your name? And it rarely actually gets answered. So So Justin Brown has a comment here. I wonder what percentage of souls die old, but wander the afterlife as a young child, visiting the places they used to dwell, possibly places they loved as a child. And that's an interesting point, because we've talked about it here before, where possibly some of these spirits that we're interacting with may be a younger version of themselves than when they actually died. That, like Dave Nunnally has that idea that Cassie in the pool at Mineral Springs actually lived a nice full life, and then in the afterlife came back to the Mineral Springs pool because that was some place that she loved to go to when she was a little girl.
Right.
So
it's like, just because there's a haunting in a building or on property doesn't mean that that's where their death actually took place. It means maybe that's just somewhere that they liked to be, and maybe they couldn't go back in life whenever they wanted to, and now they can. Just like high schools. Well, why are high schools haunted? Nobody died there. That doesn't mean somebody had to die there. It just means spirits, I think, can go, unless they're just trapped in a place, they can go wherever they want.
Right. There could certainly be an attachment to the location. You talk about schools. When we did the Liberty High investigation, we were basically playing hide and seek with, it seems at least two children there. At least one of them was a boy. The one that kind of was banging around in the bathroom a little bit, and then they were like kind of up and down the halls. But that's one where, there is an adult spirit there. The janitor, and that's, she, I guess. There's some stories about that he, she. There's some gray area there. But she had worked there for like 30 or 40 years, and then when she passed away, she basically came back to work. As far as children there, kind of like you said, they could be going back to some place that you don't usually associate people, children enjoying school, but it is a place where they would have played. They had recess, they would have played, they would have had gym, they would have played. It's where all their friends were in one central location. So there is something to attract them there. And then as far as the older kids that were in the building at one point in time, you had a basketball court there. They played games and won championships and all that sort of stuff there. So there were these memories that were created there. There were, the stage that was there, because it also doubled as an auditorium. Somebody's favorite play, that maybe they had the lead part in a play the one year, and the only year they ever had the lead part, and so it would have been something that would have meant a lot to them. Or maybe it was when they had dances there, that on that dance floor that they kissed the person they ended up marrying for the first time, and so that would cement a meaningful location for them to want to go back to in the afterlife. It doesn't have to be a death. Mm-mm. Like you said, it doesn't have to be a death. I just did it a long-winded way. But giving some examples at the same time. So, and Justin follows up with, I say that because I believe we shed multitudes of aspects of ourselves, of all ages and types, everywhere we go and live. Essentially, we can be seen and sensed in many forms, depending on the receptiveness one has to the energy at the given time. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's very... that is insightful, my friend. So thank you for the input. So another interesting location here, that was Vandalia. We talked about this quite a bit last week, which was Mineral Springs, and this is the most recent one where we talked about it in the Friday Night Ghost Frights video that we just put out of the girl coming down the hall. And this is at a different point in time. This isn't from a week and a half ago. This is from a different point in time, but this is the hallway in question. You can see it's daytime, not nighttime. There's lights on, but we didn't have this photo at our disposal last week. I don't think so. Yeah. But basically, we saw her forming up at the end of the hall more as a shadow, and then it morphed into the apparition that came down the hall, and we were kind of coaxing her, come forward, come forward, come forward, and she did until a certain point. I think, well, okay. First, I guess I have this one lined up first. So this is the room that's off to the right, that people do believe a child spirit is at. You can see in the corner there's a teddy bear and some blankets. There's other toys and stuff like that in there now. So this is Shana and I up in there one night. And so a lot of people associate this with a little girl that's there. I know Bree Jones down in the chat has talked about sensing a girl named Candy up here, but a little bit older than a little girl. So whether it's the same at different ages or two different girls, we don't know. But the one that was back in the hallway here, I seem to believe, and this was my impression when I saw her, and it may have been different for you, Shana, I don't know. But Adam Tillery drew this for one of our Encounters books. And to me, that girl we saw in the hallway looked a lot like this.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, especially her clothes.
Yep.
Because I couldn't really see, she wasn't well formed enough, at least to me, features and stuff like that, but just her overall form. And especially the dress, the shape of it. Because whatever she was wearing you couldn't see her legs at all. It was just, and just like the way it was kind of moving like a longer, one would whenever you're walking. Yeah.
Hey, David Wise mother's in the house.
Hi,
hello.
David Wise mom.
Cheryl is her name. So hello, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us. Cheryl Shoop. Thanks for joining us tonight, Cheryl. Appreciate that.
So Candy, did you see? You said, "Oh my God, that girl." Did you see?
Yeah. Did you see her?
Well, remember Kelly McCarville, whenever we started talking about her and I guess at least her and her mom, Pat's down there in chat, thought they saw a girl with a long blue dress with pink flowers on it. So that was a lot more specific, than
that was ours. A little bit more specific. Dustin Samariel's down there, and he saw her. Is Tom McNicholas or Nick Moulet down there too? Because they were with us. They saw her.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we had any video going at all, but they did have recorders going behind us. So
they had recorders going. I know Tom said that he was afraid to use his phone because he didn't want to take a picture and screw it up. I wouldn't have used flash. Right. Because I learned long ago that using flash in those situations just obliterates everything, and you don't get what you're trying to get. But yet, it never, for whatever, it's weird. It's like you get in that moment, and all of a sudden, like your senses just kind of like, your reasoning just kind of leaves you.
It becomes tunnel vision because you know that, man, I really need to capture this so I can analyze it.
I wasn't even thinking that.
I wanted her to get close enough where I could see her, touch her. I didn't care what else was going on. I just knew I wanted that really bad.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking because you and I didn't have equipment with us that night because, we're doing a public investigation. So we're just kind of, leading people around, telling the stories, that sort of thing. So I guess maybe we do it a little bit differently than other people because I know the Tillerys, they had like all their stuff.
Yeah.
But we were just kind of telling the stories as we were going along. And yeah, it never occurred to me, hey, Mike, take out your phone and just pop the video on real quick.
Yeah, Candy was saying that, that girl, that's, I guess, similar to the one that she saw, but it wasn't Molly. Molly is older than that. She's not our age. She's not a child. She's not a teenager. I feel like she's a little older. I'm still
Molly's
old
older.
enough.
Molly's like early 20s.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm old enough to be her mom.
Yeah,
young mom. But yeah, she's. I feel like she's younger than us, but older than the children that are there.
Yeah, I did put this in here for reference because I knew it was going to come up. Molly's room. Shana in Molly's room was Zara the zombie doll. Yeah, that's we're not talking about this room. We've talked a lot about Molly. We've talked a lot about this room, but this girl is not the one associated with this room. Molly's older and has a different story than this other girl. Thank you, Adam Tillery, for an amazing illustration. Donna Gordon says, I saw a little girl back near the fountain who looked dressed like maybe late 1800s, turn of the century, white dress, huge white bow in her hair, dark hair. Interesting. So the fountain downstairs by the Grand Ballroom and that upholstery shop, other than the one upstairs, there's only really two fountains. So, but yeah, Molly's older. Bria's asking 23 for Molly. I mean, I think, yeah, about that. 21, 22, 23, somewhere around there, early 20s. Yeah. So what do you think? I know you're following the chat down there.
Yeah, I saw someone saying, what girl? And, laughing. Well, the girl that we are talking about, unfortunately, did not get captured in the pic that we took. So, yeah, you not seeing a girl there. The rest of us didn't see her there either in the pic. The pic just did not capture her, unfortunately, which is the case most of the time. It's like they know that we're trying to capture them and they just don't want to be captured. So that's the way it works sometimes.
Yeah, so I see Tom McNicholas. Now, Tom, let me ask you. So is that what she looked like to you? Because, I mean, to me, that's pretty much what she looked like. I saw Dustin a little bit earlier say not holding the doll, not holding the doll in the hallway, but but looking, like this, probably like about that age. To me, this looks like about 8 years old. Yeah, and just the way the dress, the gown was. I guess other people saw some detail. So, very, very interesting to me. Okay, and I see your post, Jay. The girl we saw isn't in the pic we posted. Yeah, I'll go back to that, and I know you just said that.
Yes, I just did. I wanted to clarify so that we didn't look like fools.
Yeah. And I thought I said that back when. Where is it's right here. I thought I was clear when I first brought this up. This photo was on a different day. Probably like a year difference here. You can see it's during the day. The lights are on, all of that. The investigation that we did was the night of the Paracon, dark. There's some street lights that come on through the windows, and we had flashlights and all that sort of stuff. But it's not the same day.
The girl in the photo, Jay, we don't have a documented name. At this point in time, it's all just whoever's perception, perceives what her name is. Everybody could be getting a different name.
Yeah, I mean, not like I got a name or anything. It was just a little girl standing there. Tom is saying he saw the dress, he couldn't see her face. Yeah, I don't know if this is the same one that Bree thinks might be Candy.
Yeah, here's the thing, and even with psychic mediums, the best one in the world, it's still, at this point, until there is actual physical documentation, that name that you're perceiving, there's a great many spirits in that venue. It could be anybody.
Yeah, well, I
don't want that to sound bad.
Right. Well, even with Molly, that's the name that you picked up on because, you thought you were getting an M, you got poked. You said, is it Molly? Because that name came to your mind. You pretty much almost got pushed out of the chair and into my lap, and it was so forceful that I got knocked backward. So based on that, seems like decent evidence.
Yeah,
we start calling her Molly.
I feel strongly, but it's still speculation. I have zero proof, so I'm not going to sit here and say, yep, her name is Molly. I can prove that. I can't prove that. And I'm not going to say that I can prove that until I can prove it. Once I find physical documentation of it, if that's her name, then I would be more than happy to provide that as proof. But until now, it is just my own personal feelings or what I feel it is based on the response I got whenever I said her name. But it's still not 100%. But I call her that. and she reacts to it, responds to it, and 99.9 billion% of the time, she is everywhere that I go. So she is my attachment, and I am going to keep her until she doesn't want to be around me anymore. So, yeah. And I am definitely not a psychic medium. I'm not going to ever give myself that label.
But you would
I don't want to be.
You don't want to be known as that. You don't want to be called that. But you could say that you are a sensitive and an empath.
Yeah, I have moments. Sometimes I'll hear voices. Well, a lot of the times I hear voices, but not in quite the fashion that Vanessa does. And I don't want to do that. I am 100% positive I do not want to do that. So I'm fine.
You don't want to channel people?
No, I don't. I am just fine right where I am. If it's meant to happen, it's going to just hit me like a truck someday, and then it'll just start coming to me. I'm not really wanting to develop it any further than what I've just been naturally doing, because I don't get enough sleep at night as it is. I don't need stuff like that keep me awake at all hours of the night, and I can't do that.
Kind of like your first experience, it did kind of hit you like a truck. You ended up moving into a haunted house that had a little girl.
Yeah. That was my very, very, very first experience ever. And considering all the places that I've been and all the history that was in these places, my filters, my mind, whatever, was just completely closed off to it. So that stuff could have been happening around me all the time, and I just wasn't interested in pursuing it, I guess, enough. You know, the only paranormal thing that I got into was Scooby-Doo, you know. That's the bulk of my experience. Yeah, at a young age. But while I'm watching it, I'm not like, ooh, I'd like to do that. So maybe, you know, that's just.
I was always disappointed that the monsters and the ghosts would turn out to be people. I always wanted them to be real. Yeah. And I was duped into every episode. Maybe it's real this time. Maybe it's real. Oh, no, it's not.
I wish I was a ghost right now. No,
you don't.
No, unless, I mean, now, you know, one day you will be one. That doesn't need to be right now. So just putting that out there. I am totally going to be the kind that goes to skeptics and just scares the crap out of them.
There you go. I like that meme that says, you know, when we die, I hope we're best ghost pals and scare the shit out of people, or whatever it is. It's funny. So yeah, I mean, to me,
that's interesting.
What's that? Excuse me.
Justin's next question.
Do I not see it yet?
That's a good one.
Okay. So, Shana, have you ever considered the possibility that other children's spirits see you as you were a child? Like that's what they chose to see in you? That's an interesting question.
I don't know.
I always like Justin's questions.
Yeah, I do know that whenever I'm dealing with spirits of any age, whoever's there listening to me at the time that I am trying to interact, I always ask them what they see. You know, I mean, what do they see? You know, do they see a hair color? You know, do they see someone tall? Do they see
you as the ghost?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, do you see, you know, my eyes, my nose, my mouth? Do you see the color of my shirt? Do you see, you know, what do you see? Because, you know, give me an EVP that says they can't see the color of my shirt and I'm aware of that answer when I'm still there talking to them. I'll be like, okay, so then do you just hear a voice but you don't see a person at all? You know, is it just I hear a voice but I don't see where it's coming from? Because, you know, that's the case most of the time when you're investigating, you're talking to a room or you're, you know, you feel like somebody's there but you don't necessarily see them. And so it's like, well, I'm just talking to myself right now, you know, a few hours later, I'll be able to listen and see if I heard anything. But, you know, for right now, if anybody else that didn't know me were watching me, they think I was crazy, which, you know, that happens a lot in this field. People sometimes think we're crazy. It happens. I will gladly be crazy if it means that I still get to do what I do. But yeah, I don't know what they see, but we ask.
Yeah, we do throw those questions out there, and to me it's interesting that when it comes to questions about the afterlife, we never really get any answers with those questions. Like we'll get responses to what they may or may not have experienced in life. We might even get a name at times, but when it comes to questions about how they are existing in the afterlife and how they perceive us or time, we'll ask them sometimes, how do you see the room right now? Does it look like this or that? Like, we'll describe it maybe how it looks right now, and then describe it as maybe it looked back then, and try to find out if that's how they're viewing it. We never really get answers to those questions, which is kind of interesting. Robert Hanna, quick comment from him. Scooby-Doo teaches you that humans are the real monsters. Yeah, I know, but I always wanted the ghosts to be real at some point. Diane Hilbert says, ghosts always see me as a giant. If you knew Diane, because she's so small. That's why she's our fairy queen.
I like fairies.
Yeah, no, Diane's awesome. We love Diane. Yeah, and then Robert Hanna, are we ghosts to them? And so that I kind of, while you were talking, I kind of threw that in there that, maybe we are the ghosts to them, It's kind of like, that movie, The Others. And I've heard accounts of, people seeing apparitions, and those apparitions are looking at them and responding to us, flesh and body, as if we are the ghosts. And I've mentioned the experience I had at Johnny V's and walking in there and that shadow taking off through the doors, and it's like I scared it. Did it perhaps see me as something else when I walked in? I mean, it's always possible. So, I guess Dustin wants me to point out the coffee. So, all right, we'll do that. So this is per request by Dustin. 100 Road Roast to help shunt ghosts. There you go. Shameless plug. All right. And if you want some, just go to haunterroadmedia.com. Go to the merch section. Yep. And Tim shown the same thing. Ghosts matter too. Nice. Thanks, Candy. They do.
Ghost lives matter too.
Yep.
Yes.
Jared Osborne, Tesla covers this theory. Yes, he did. Era Robin says, I love seeing your posts of cemeteries. Where did your love for visiting them originate?
I didn't used to be very comfortable in them. I used to, someone that used to babysit my sister and I used to live at the very foot of the Catholic cemetery.
Oh, in Kempsville.
Yeah, and her husband was buried up there. And we would walk up there with her and stuff like that. And I always hated that cemetery. And
it's very scenic getting there.
Yeah, and it would be, no matter what kind of a day it would be so calm, there'd be no wind, and then you'd get up there and it would just be windy as hell up there. And I used to always think, what in the world is it about this place? And then I met the little girl in Alton that, and I started getting more into the paranormal and stuff like that. And where does one go other than their own haunted house whenever they want to interact with spirits? They go where dead people are and see if there's any still kind of lingering around. And Alton has a lot of cemeteries. Or actually has some cemeteries, and they're just really huge. It seems like there's,
it's got some big ones, yeah.
Yeah, and so I started doing that, and then I started spending more time in the ones in my hometown. And then my dad and I would, start going around to different, once he realized that I had that fondness for old cemeteries and old houses and stuff like that, then we would, hop on the bike and just go for a ride and check out all these different places. And because of him, we've had some really cool experiences. So... But yeah, I haven't always had a fondness for cemeteries. They used to creep me out. So,
well, there was always that thing when we were kids. My sister was big on it for a while when we were little. That hold your breath as you're driving by a cemetery, and sometimes it's kind of hard to do that with some of the larger ones. But for me, I started finding them very, very cool in 5th grade when I was living in Westfield, Massachusetts at the time, and there's actually one of the oldest cemeteries in the country that's there. And 5th grade, for a little afternoon project, we walked down to that cemetery. It's the old burying grounds in Westfield, Massachusetts. And we went down there to do gravestone rubbings. That was a class project. Go down to the cemetery and do gravestone rubbings on these stones that were, 250 years old. I mean, seriously, there are ones from before the Revolution that are there. The earliest graves date back into the 1600s. Not all of those have stones. I guess there's like 600 unmarked graves at this cemetery. I just went back there last summer, so check out that video. I did go live from there, and although the live feed wasn't the greatest in the world, but some of the photos I got from there were like amazing, of these really, really old headstones. Some of them actually in very good shape. And so I was just fascinated by the age of these things, and like the intricate artwork. The lettering on some of them, it just was like, wow, here's history. And then, as I got more and more into like my family genealogy and all of that, cemeteries kind of like became necessary, really, as you're trying to, trace back the roots and figure out where everybody is and how different family relationships and dynamics worked when people moved from one state to another. All those different sort of things you have to access, a lot of the information with the cemeteries. And I always, going to the cemeteries and visiting them, I always became fascinated with like the older stones and just the artwork that's on them, the sculptures that are on them, some of the masonry, mausoleums, especially the really cool ornate ones. I love, especially like Lakeview up in the Cleveland area. Oh my God, it's like its own little city that's there of all of these mausoleums. And so,
if you want to check that place out, take a day.
Yeah,
because in 2 hours' time, we still had only canvassed a small portion of that place.
Oh, it's huge.
It's a gigantic.
Yeah, there's like 100,000 people buried there. It's crazy.
I mean, I saw. I've been kind of reading the comments and stuff like that. Why cemeteries? I mean, cemeteries are. Cemeteries are active. It doesn't mean that everybody's remains, everybody's souls are coming back to haunt the place where they're resting. I don't believe that. I don't believe cemeteries are haunted just because somebody died there and is buried there. I don't think spirits have a reason to stay with their remains, but I do believe that if someone that they are connected to in some way, whether it be family or just a passing energy, it's like, oh, who's that? I believe that they will visit just like we do. So wherever I'm buried at, if my family that's still amongst the living and friends come to visit me, I'm going to be interested in that. So I may not be there for myself, but I'm going to be there because of them, because cemeteries are very active. Sometimes I'll be going by and I'll just feel some passing energy, or a name will catch my, will stop me for a minute, and I'll be like, well, I don't know why this one in particular is stopping me, but what's going on? And then, that's what I got about cemeteries. I love them.
I mean, people don't, the spirits aren't there to hang out with their bodies unless they're an extreme narcissist. But, there's different reasons why a spirit would come back to cemeteries. So it always kind of baffles me when you have some of these people that say, well, cemeteries aren't haunted because, people aren't hanging out with their body. Well, no, they're not there for their body. But there's different reasons as to why they may be coming there. And, I still think that when you're there at a cemetery and you're there to observe a particular person, maybe you start talking about them. If they're a loved one, maybe you start reminiscing about some of the good times, or even like we've done where, we start observing headstones and making different connections. We start talking about them, and they kind of like, get like, it's almost like ringing a bell, and they're like, hey, somebody's talking about us. And so they go and visit and try to find out why. Or maybe in the afterlife, they found out that somebody, loved one passed away, so they go to visit the cemetery. And so there's different reasons as to why a spirit may be visiting a cemetery, and it's not because they just want to hang out with their body, which is the furthest thing from the truth. So
some of these stuff in there is funny.
Yeah. So
it's
from
so
Karen,
funny.
do you guys think if we are cremated, we will be unable to come back and haunt? No, because the spirit has nothing to do with the physical body, other than that it's attached to the physical body for a certain length of time.
Rita was cremated.
Right.
She comes back.
And she comes back. We have her on SLS.
Yes, we do. And someday, maybe the world will go to see it. Maybe they won't.
That's at the discretion of the family. But
yeah.
That was one of the very, very, very few times that we've investigated for a specific person directly after a death, and that's because it was at the request of the family.
Right.
So we're not sitting in our kitchen with a ghost box trying to contact people who just died.
No, that's not how that happens, because that is very disrespectful. But the family and friends are requested that we try to reach out and make contact. And so we did. We did not have to use a ghost box. What the hell? Yeah. But what we did use was very effective. And someday maybe the world will see it. Someday, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It was a very cool experience, and I'm glad we had
That was
it.
an interesting night. It really was. Just from all the different things that happened. Some of it got lost thanks to a corruption of a memory card.
Still need to get that.
But we have the other stuff. So yeah. So the other one we already talked about, your the first one that you experienced, which was the one that the haunted house that you moved into in Alton. But we always have to talk about this a little bit. Another fantastic Adam Tillery illustration. Not that. That is an Adam Tillery illustration, but not that one. This one. Byron. Because this is like a really another significant child encounter from, I guess, your younger years of not even investigating, but just, when you were really first, I guess, having those experiences.
Yeah. And it was impossible not to have those experiences. If you're even just the slightest bit sensitive to it, that place will unlock the filters of your mind.
Although it's underwater right now.
It's underwater right now, but upstairs, even though I cannot see it, there are wet footprints up there. It happened every single time the water came up. It was the coolest thing. Child footprints, wet. Child footprints would just show up in real time while you'd be in another room. And then adult footprints would be up there too. So, and yes, I did touch it. And it felt, it was water, but kind of mixed with dust and just whatever, was up there. But it was still kind of the weird consistency other than dust and water. So, not 100% sure, but, yeah, like the little girl that I saw, my very first one, I was somewhat attached to her, but not so much that there was enough of a connection that she followed me. She
probably stayed there at that house.
Yeah. She's probably still there. Byron, I spent a lot more time interacting with, and
so you knew about, I guess you knew about the story of Byron. Small community, people knew his story, and so you found out that way. But Going back to the little girl real quick, and I know that was like your real first paranormal experience. Did you do any research at that time? And I know what you would have done then is far different than what you would have done now, but to, find out maybe, okay, who lived here before, is she a little girl, somebody that was any of that?
Yeah, it did not even, like I said, that's like my first run, into it. So I really didn't know any of the stuff that I do now. It was just like, I never recorded anything. I never did any of that. I just interacted with her, and that was it. It didn't occur to me to try to capture any of it to put it out there. I wasn't in it like that.
Well, not necessarily put it out there, but just maybe your own personal curiosity. Who is she?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course I wanted to, who she was, but I didn't realize that she wasn't going to be able to tell me. They talked on Scooby-Doo, even though they were human. They knew who they were. They would find out, who they thought they were, and then they'd find out who they really were. But I didn't really know as much as I did then. So
I like this. You always talk about your black little heart, but here's Karen Whitaker saying, Shana, kids follow you because of your pure sweetheart.
Come on, Karen. It's a secret. I need nobody to know I'm nice or something like that. Gotta have some fear. Gotta have some of that.
Yeah. And Era's asking what place is underwater right now with the wet prints, and that's the cafe in Campsville.
That's the cafe. It's very much underwater right now, actually.
Well, at least from the first floor down.
Yeah. And there's going to be even more damage to the building. And the person that bought it is probably wishing he did not buy it.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, that was an option last year, $800. I know Tom McNicholas was kind of pushing, hey, you guys should get it. It's like, I didn't want the liability, though. No,
I mean, the water is like literally halfway up the door on the first floor.
And there were already issues with part of that first floor, the floor being rotted out, and you'd fall right into the basement. And with people possibly breaking in there. I mean, just the condition of it. I'm looking at it like, I'd buy this and the place would be condemned, and then I got a mess on my hands.
So I know that eventually they're going to knock it down.
Yeah,
they're gonna get rid of it, just like Louise, like the Campsville Inn. They're gonna, that also, which is a shame.
That's a nice big building. That's in better shape for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of floods, and then there's been more water, just as much water in that one, if not more water in that one. In the cafe, it's right by the river.
Like literally right next to it.
But I'm going to find out who owns the cafe now, and before he demolishes it or has it done, or the town has it done or whatever, I'm getting in there. I don't care if I have to go up a ladder up the side of the building like I've done before, with permission, of course, because I get permission. It's a good idea. It's not always a cool thing to do, but it's the right thing to do.
So Diane Hilbert says they found a buyer. Yeah, I guess it was like, I don't know, probably about a good 4, maybe 5 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, somebody finally did buy it. Yeah, and had plans for it, but it is what it is. Yeah. That building has had probably 1 or 2 floods in it a year for quite a long time. The river comes up just every year, and it does get high enough to...
All right, well, I guess that is our cue to wrap up the show, since the live stream just abruptly disconnected. But thank you all very much for tuning in and watching this episode of Inside the Upside Down, talking about contacting child spirits. I'm Mike Ricksecker.
I'm Shana Wankel.
Please check out our other videos listed somewhere here on other hauntings and supernatural activity. Until next time.